So he doesn't actually say, or the encyclical doesn't actually say, that tech itself is not neutral, but tech under this condition. And it's a condition of the conditioners. So what he's constantly after is that the some will use technology to oppress the many, because in the modern world, it's no longer the state that has the primary concentrated power of modern technique and technology, but it's private corporations that do. And so the encyclical's worry over and over is emphatically about the some oppressing the many through the use of the instruments of technology.
Hello, listeners. Special announcement. This Friday, June the 5th at 12 p.m. Eastern, we will be having a live Q&A. You are welcome to join that by becoming a Patreon member. You can send us your questions. So if you haven't already and you're a Patreon member, send us a question or two that we will answer. We've already got a couple, so feel free to do that. You can sign up for our Patreon, link in the description. Hello and welcome to What Would Jesus Tech? My name is Andrew Noble, and I am a human being who thinks we should use artificial intelligence to some degree, but that we should use it wisely. I think we should have dialogues about this and not just take one person's opinion for it. And apparently I agree with the Pope, who also believes in dialogue. And though he's written an encyclical portraying his thoughts on AI and the risks to humanity, he wants to dialogue as well. We did hope for him to join us on this episode, but he's not going to be able to make it today. So you'll have to tune back in for future weeks to hear the Pope on What Would Jesus Tech. But we are really glad to be joined not only by my two co-hosts, Joel Jacob, he works as a product manager. Austin, he works as a pastor. I'm Andrew, I work as a professor. And we have Wyatt Graham, another professor, and he's the dean at Carey Theological Seminary out in British Columbia. How you doing, Wyatt?
Great. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I was just saying before we started that I finally have a place to live, so that feels nice.
How dare you want a place to live? Who do you think you are for
know.
wanting a home for your family? How dare you?
Oh, so you
How
moved
dare
out
I?
is what you were explaining. I didn't catch that you moved out west.
Yeah. It was 4,295 kilometers, and I drove most of it. No, I drove all of it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a move, all right.
Well, congratulations on that job. And thank you for helping us think through this today. You are a Protestant, but I think it's fair to say that you are open to learning from Catholic social teaching as well. And can you just give some context about what this document is? I've seen different people in the tech community be surprised that the Pope is speaking on this, and why is this Pope speaking on AI, and they're kind of confused about what this even is in the first place. So maybe you can just give some background to the document that we're going to be discussing today.
Yeah, so the document's an encyclical letter, which is like a letter intended to be read by the whole church and probably others, if you think of it that way. It's part of the teaching authority of the church. So it's an ordinary teaching instrument. And these are incredibly normal for popes to do. I don't know if they do it every single year, but these are letters that are regular and normal. But in particular, over the last 150 years, there has been a move to write these encyclicals towards the new things. So the new things of the day, and this has to do with Catholic social teaching. So Catholic social teaching is that body of doctrine or teaching that teaches you how to be a Christian in the world. It teaches you how to think through social teaching, namely employment, property rights, and much more besides. So if someone was surprised that the Pope would talk about AI and what that means for the human person, the noble humanity that we have when it comes to employment, to work, how we treat someone else, someone surprised that it talks about transhumanism as it does, that would be no surprise to a Roman Catholic, to a Roman Catholic who pays attention, more accurately, to these things. Because Catholic social teaching has been a thing for years. I'm not sure. I mean, there's actually a history in the letter we're going to look at, the Magnificat Humanitas, where Pope Leo XIV and really his group of scholars recount Catholic social teaching. And I think you could probably place its explicit naming in the late 1800s, but obviously it's been around forever. It's not new. So Catholic social teaching is that body of doctrine that teaches you how to live in the world as a Christian when it comes to work, employment, taxes, property rights, whether you should be a Marxist or a capitalist or whatever else. And it just so happens that artificial intelligence, well, it's actually not so much AI. If you read the encyclical, it's those who are behind AI and what they're doing to the human person that the encyclical is really pointed towards. So it's not surprising that this would come out early in Pope Leo XIV's service as Pope.
Yeah, it definitely focuses on the power dynamics relating to artificial intelligence. It speaks on issues that I wasn't expecting it to, like it even references robotics in a few different places. And so when people tend to think about AI, sometimes they're not including robotics in that scope. But yeah, I have areas where I might disagree with it, but I'll start with just one of the areas that I appreciated, and then I'll pass it back to you, Wyatt, in terms of if you want to riff on this or speak on it on an area that you appreciated from it. But I liked how much it emphasized for the broad population reading this that technology is not neutral. I'll quote from it: "In practice, however, technology is never neutral because it takes on the characteristics of those who devise, finance, regulate, and use it. Therefore, the primary choice is not between a yes or no to technology, but rather between constructing Babel or rebuilding Jerusalem, between a power that claims to dominate the heavens and a people who work together in the presence of God to rebuild the walls of fraternal coexistence." End quote. And that's just one of the areas where it speaks about this, not only the neutrality, but also this paradigm. Babel gets a shout out. Austin and I have talked about this many times on the podcast before.
I will become a Catholic if the Pope acknowledges that there is more to the Bible on this subject than just the Tower of Babel.
He talks about more than just the Tower of Babel. He just uses it as
I know.
an illustration.
It was already long enough as is. It didn't need to be longer.
Right. But yeah, so I think there's a good technology criticism in this document. It recognizes that it doesn't use the word affordances, but it references how there's design principles built into the product that then shapes the users, that can reinforce inequity, it can reinforce injustice, it can reinforce good or evil. And it's about the design of the product itself. So that was one of my appreciations for the document. What about you, Wyatt?
I actually also really appreciate that, although I would come at it from a different angle. I think so. What this document is also prudence in practice. So they're working from certain principles. Maybe I guess you could call them in this particular argument, it's a first principle for the argument, but they are these principles that are established as the principles of some principles of Catholic social teaching. So the inalienable dignity of the human person, the common good, the universal destination of goods, subsidiarity, solidarity,
which is an
and
important
social
one.
justice.
That one, I was like, oh, I've never seen that unpacked so well. The subsidiarity.
Yeah,
subsidiarity.
that was good.
I appreciated that.
It kind of reminds me of like the sphere sovereignty stuff in the neo-Calvinist tradition and all that jazz.
Yes.
And they all come about at the same time in history. So you're like, oh, I wonder if, anyways.
It was a little disorienting as a neo-Calvinist reading this, going like, wait a minute, this is the Pope. Why am I in so much agreement with him?
Yeah, it just so happens that for issues of moral theology, we are, I think, virtually aligned in every particular. I can't think, in terms of like social and moral teaching, is there anything that we would be in essential disagreement on? I don't know. Probably Protestants would have some different views on birth control and things like that, but
Right,
yeah,
kind of
so I appreciate that. But well, I guess what I'm trying to get is this is it's really interesting. So this is an exercise in like prudential reasoning from these principles that are, yes, arguably biblical and then natural as well. So when it comes to the neutrality one, I was thinking of that as well as really helpful. But the way that he locates tech as not being neutral is not. It's interesting. So he doesn't actually say, or the encyclical doesn't actually say that tech itself is not neutral, but tech under this condition. and it's a condition of the conditioners. So what he's constantly after is that the some will use technology to oppress the many, because in the modern world, it's no longer the state that has the primary concentrated power of modern technique and technology, but it's private corporations that do. And so the encyclical's worry over and over is emphatically about the some oppressing the many through the use of the instruments of technology. And that makes it a really humane document. I really love that, because I think sometimes there's a danger where we go like, we're abstracting technology. You're like, the phone is bad because the phone does X, or the social media is bad because the social media does Y.
Yeah.
And undoubtedly, there's something to that. Don't mishear me. But it's really important that we have humane arguments for and against tech using prudential reasoning, which is in this document. If you notice, prudential reasoning is something unique that we alone can do and AI cannot do. There's a uncrossable chasm based on human experience. At least that
You
the
want
Pope
to? I mean,
argues.
yeah. There's a lot of questions. What's that reasoning you mentioned? That what the word you used? Potential reasoning.
Prudential. So prudential is that it is a virtue of the soul that distinguishes right from wrong based on it's usually the intellect in line with the appetites and so on. So it's something that is unique to human reasoning and action because it's something that flows out of the soul.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think that, and that was probably one of my sticking points that I've said on the pod in the past is like, I think oftentimes people are so quick to put up, sacred altars or milestone of like, okay, everything can happen except for this. And like emotions, for example, is one I think that's debated. I am of the camp that I think the soul is definitely one we can say that humans are not creating that's exclusively God. But I think in this letter, he definitely had maybe a broader scope of what he restricted to humans than I and maybe other people in like the tech community would agree with. But what I actually saw that was really refreshing or interesting is that he held the release of this to be on the anniversary of I think it's a encyclical or something called like a Revonorum, you'll probably have to double check it, of Leo the 13th when the Industrial Revolution happened, and the same pattern of like these uh, corporations were potentially oppressing like the laborers.
Yeah.
And like there was like another, let's call it encyclical at that time. Maybe you all also had heard about that too.
It is an encyclical. So 1891, Rerum Novarum. It's on new things. So remember earlier, I mean, maybe I should have been explicit, but I was saying like encyclicals are often nowadays written towards the new thing, the res novae. So the new thing is the new thing that is causing social upheaval. So in the late 19th century, that was Marxism, and then what do you want to call it? Industrial capitalism or something like that. And so it's written against the exploitation or misunderstanding of both. So like one of the principles of Catholic social teaching is can't remember the exact language, but basically we everything that we have we should share in common for the common good. But it doesn't mean that there's no right to property rights within that. So it's kind of against a sort of a pure Marxism. But on the other hand, it's sort of against an industrial capitalism, which maybe wants to accumulate capital with the some to oppress the many or whatever. So what this is nothing new in terms of principle. It's quite different in terms of application, of course, because of the technological world. And while there may be an uncrossable chasm of soul to machine or whatever, I think you'd probably, at least Joel, appreciate how, like, I found that he was, like, the news cycle was, like, the Pope comes out against AI, which he clearly didn't.
No.
Not even close. He said it was
No.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
He's
it's
just talking about
interesting.
prudential reasoning around it.
Yeah, I mean, in the social world that I'm in, there's a lot of tech builders who are actually like reposted the video. Actually, even on X, I reposted a video that the Catholic Church put out showing like technological change over the years, and tech builders were saying, "Oh, this is inspiring." It's like, "Oh my gosh, look, babe, the Pope dropped a even more like pro innovation video than tech builders. So it's like there was actually like a mixed sentiment. I would say some people were like surprised and encouraged that the church is actually leaning in to the conversation, which I think resonated with me because in this podcast, that's something that we try to do. I often talk to people in Christian circles that are so far removed from technology that it's like, whoa, here's like a leader of a large group of people, the Catholic Church, who's actually trying to bring, Christian teaching into the conversation. And I was also surprised that they did this kind of with a partnership with Anthropic, where I think one of the co-founders, let me see if I can find out who it was, Chris Olaf, I think, or I'll have to double check my sources as well. But he spoke with the Pope, and then that also gave me some cause of like, oh, Anthropic is often trying to position AI as like so dangerous that we have to regulate it, and kind of uses that so they can get advantage from regulatory capture.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting, we might say, like, well thought out piece that is. I mean, maybe I'll just go back to one of the things that I said earlier. I think that there's been in the past decade this fundamental error where we go after the piece of technology, like the actual physical digital circuit board. It's, video games are bad. This is about 12, 15 years ago. Video games are bad because you'll, I don't know, do a crime because of them.
Yeah.
Or, digital music machines are bad. Like a Zoom, what are they called? Zoom, the Microsoft Zoom or whatever it is.
The Zune?
Zune, yeah.
Z-U-N-E.
Remember Walkmans? And I used to go, I used to go rollerblading with a Discman. Those are cool. And then I got one that like when you bounced, it would kind of like wouldn't skip, and that was like a huge advancement.
Technology.
But a little bit.
Anti-skip was the jam.
Yeah. So, and then all of these, but I think there's a fundamental error there because it removes prudential reasoning, which is important to being human, and it makes you instead a sort of a digital machine. If X, then Y, because Y, X bad. Like that's all you do. So if digital technology is involved, then bad. Digital technology is involved, therefore bad. It's a moral syllogism that removes wisdom. And the approach of this, based on so the approach, remember those Catholic social teaching principles that I listed earlier. The whole document is predicated on those, and they're always they're interweaved throughout most paragraphs probably. And that's really, really important because this is an evidence of how you can use wisdom based on first principles to understand the world around you. It's showing it in action. And the encyclical, I think, is a masterclass in not attacking the digital instrument itself, but what it's actually doing in terms of being inhumane, because as C.S. Lewis argued in The Abolition of Man, when the conditioners, the some, have concentrated power of the instruments of power, and then they will oppress the many. And this is precisely the kind of thing he's getting at. And also note that he quotes Romano Guardini, and if you haven't read Romano Guardini, you just need to.
Yeah, it was refreshing, again, to go back to being a neo-Calvinist, to see that for a theological tradition that is very focused on forms, the forms of worship, the forms of Roman Catholicism's ecclesiology, to see a distinction made between form and essence, which is a key distinction that neo-Calvinism kind of is built on, because it gets at a lot of, like you said, Wyatt, just a lot of the very lazy and shallow criticisms of technology over the past 10 plus years. Video game bad, smartphones bad, screens bad, and the problem with it is that it's just a very shallow form of reasoning, because it's just solely focused on the forms, and it just bypasses any conversation about essence, which is what the Pope is doing here in this encyclical, and saying, yes, there are things to be concerned about with the forms, but the greater danger here is the essence created by these forms and what they will lead us to be, what kind of things they will reinforce theologically, what kind of things it will reinforce socially, what kind of things it will reinforce politically and saying that's where the attention really needs to
Yeah.
be.
And it's also why, I mean, you brought it up earlier, Andrew, when you said that, I like dialogue, the Pope likes dialogue, whatever. But actually, the reason that the encyclical is emphasizing dialogue is because this is a social project that involves all of us, and it's
Mhm.
deeply humane, and therefore you do need to have dialogue. I mean, it's really interesting. Sometimes you think, well, there's endless dialogue and it gets us nowhere. We just need action. And of course, sometimes that's true. But in fact, if you think about how you actually live, unless you're isolated, you pretty much live most of your life in some sort of dialogue with people. That's just what it means to be human. It may look
Mhm.
different. It may be iMessages, and it may be sign language or whatever. So I don't mean literal vocalization, but really to be human is to be in dialogue. That is, it's beyond a sort of material or economic thing. It's just what it is. So that this is a social project that involves all humans is pretty central to this. The pursuit of truth, I
Mhm.
don't know if you saw, that was huge, and then for the common good, and then the idea of the shared goods idea as well. What is that
Yeah.
principle called again? I can't remember.
The common good,
No,
because
not the common good. The universal destination of goods.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
The common good
which
is in there too. You're right, but that the one I was thinking of was the sort of universal destination of goods, because I mean that's an interesting principle that I think is probably tough for us in North America to fully
Yeah.
grasp. The idea that we owe one another love, and that concrete form of love could quite literally be giving your cloak to another.
yeah, so you're touching on something really important. I was recently asked why I'm interested in technology, like what's motivating me to study it. And I responded that, well, I love people and
Right.
technology is derivative of people. So I learn about people through learning about technology. It's in the same way that you can study
It's an
nature and learn
artifact
about
of
God.
culture, which is people.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a whole
Right.
Yeah.
thing. It's
So
like social media, it's real life. But go on, sorry.
yeah, exactly.
Shots fired.
So Melvin Kranzberg, I love quoting his 6 laws of technology. One of them, he says, the most important aspect of any technology is the human element. And in that, he says, there's a man. I see a face behind every machine, and
Mm.
so this is getting at that. What the Pope is getting at, this underlying, where are the faces? What are the faces doing? What are they prioritizing? What are they valuing? And working through the values into these other aspects. I appreciate how you kind of set up that context, because I want to encourage our listeners not to merely listen to takes about the encyclical, but to read it themselves,
Yes.
and to see the structure of it. It, yes, includes an introduction, which is like an overview to the whole thing. Then it goes through some background, because guess what? There's been a lot written before about social teaching. So we're not just starting
Mhm.
fresh. So there's a long recounting of that. And then there are these principles, and then you see the principles unpacked in different areas. So it has that framing. Now, I want to go back to what you just mentioned about the future destiny of goods, of common goods. And the overall framing of New Jerusalem, he goes to Nehemiah. He contrasts Babel with Nehemiah. I thought this was very interesting because
Yes.
one thing that I've seen church pastors do is when they want to build a new building, they go to Nehemiah and they say, let's build like Nehemiah. And then you study the book of Nehemiah, and at the end of the book you say, we need to sacrifice for the sake of the common good. We need to build a new church building, so therefore give money, just like the people in Nehemiah's day did. And there's parts of the encyclical's approach to it, and I would say it's the Pope that authored it, but with these sorts of documents, there's multiple authors, and maybe we'll get into this, whether or not some AI supported this in some part of the process. I would think there is some AI that was used in the development of it. But anyways, getting to that later, just this idea of, to what degree do we build Jerusalem as Christians in 2026?
Mm.
Are we building Jerusalem? Is that it's analogical maybe, but actually the new heavens and new earth, we don't get to build that. That's Christ doing, right? Like what is theologically the role of humanity in building the new Jerusalem, Wyatt?
Oh, that was addressed to me. Interesting. I was hoping it was going to be addressed to Austin. So in the encyclical, the at the end it clarifies that The two-city notion is a parable. So a parable is you're telling one story that means something else. So he's not saying this is literally what Nehemiah is about, just as a quick caveat. And he is quoting also Augustine's later on, the City of God, which is a foundational document, we might say, in social teaching. It's political thought, but social teaching. So that kind of goes back to it. I think I wrote for Mere Orthodoxy something on institution building via the analogy of the City of God. And I would also say you just need this is the preface to my answer. Jacques Ellul's The Meaning of the City is a great little resource to think through this biblically. So what is our role? Well, I would say I would shy away from our social action as being the mode by which we build the kingdom on earth or something like that. I don't typically use that language. I would simply say that we are to use the language of a early second century anonymous Christian document. We're the soul to the world. Christians are those who give life to the world. That's what that means in that context. So we are the salt of the earth, the light on a hill, etc. For me, it's not so much about building the kingdom as it is recognizing the basic dignity of human beings created in God's image, which is in this encyclical as well, and our duty to love one another, our neighbor as ourself. And I think that looks concrete. I quoted Jesus earlier about giving your cloak, but concretely actually might mean supporting technology or AI use that is more humane, for example. That could be one specific application here. I'll let Austin go. He can talk about neo-Calvinistic transformationalism or something.
I mean, I actually don't have much to say on that front. I think you hit the hammer pretty well there. I mean, I get a little weary with like the build the kingdom language, just because it exists in the church and it also exists in the Christian nonprofit space. That there are no shortage of end of year fundraising campaigns that talk about, donate to this parachurch organization and build the kingdom. And I think what he does in this framing that I think is very helpful, even though I do think there are some issues with the comparison between Babel and Nehemiah that are neither here nor there. But I do think the one thing that is most helpful is getting at least the thought of the kingdom just on the forefront of people's minds here, because we can jump so quickly into like, we got to build the kingdom. But are we even seeking it to begin with? And if we are wanting to see the kingdom of God coming, Jesus himself tells us, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. We can't build something that we're not first consciously, deliberately seeking. And that seeking will inform how we go about bringing that kingdom into our lives and into our communities, the things that we can do to see that kingdom come and the things that are beyond our power to make that kingdom realized. But we have to have a posture first of wanting to consciously seek that kingdom before we don't build the kingdom of God by accident. The kingdom of God does not get accidentally built. It is a conscious advance of a very divine reality into the world that is very intentional. It just doesn't happen haphazardly. I had a question for Wyatt specifically. Wyatt, I'm a Protestant, and I'm a Reformed Protestant. I'm Presbyterian theologically. Why should I care about what the Pope thinks about this? I've got my own people in my own tradition, in my own orbit, writing about AI, thinking about AI, doing stuff on AI for the church. Like, why should I bother with this as a Protestant specifically? That's not my position, but I have heard more than a handful of people express that, and I think it's a good question to bring up.
I mean, the one simple answer is like, why should you read Jonathan Haidt? Catholic social.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer.
Like, what's the answer there? And like every single Protestant, usually Presbyterians, citing him like crazy, or Jean Twenga in her. So it's like, why do you cite them?
India.
Or Freya India. I don't know.
Because
he might be Protestant. I don't actually know, but for Jonathan Haidt, I believe is Catholic, right? So it's just an interesting question of why
Jewish
would you
background.
cite anyone
He's
who has
Jewish.
something? Who's Jewish?
Haidt is Jewish.
Or at least he has a Jewish background.
I have to Google
He
this.
doesn't-
nearly certain that he was in the Catholic
We have to
Church.
fact check. We have to fact check this in real
Oh,
time.
you're right. He's not Catholic. Well, AI just told me he's not Catholic. Gemini told
Is
me.
this a
I thought he was.
hallucination?
Okay.
But no, that's
yeah.
a good answer though. Is that there is something of a double standard in my camp specifically of we recognize all truth is God's truth, so to speak. We shall not despise the spirit by despising truth wherever it may be found. To paraphrase Calvin, there, we do have maybe a well-founded historical gag reflex when it comes to the papacy. But I don't always know if living with the 16th century Reformation mindset where that gag reflex comes from is necessarily helpful for today. I'm not a Catholic. I have no desire to become a Catholic. But in reading this encyclical as a neo-Calvinist, again, it's like, wow, there is a lot in here that is good and true and beautiful, and I should be thankful for this. And I should commend it where it is good, true, and beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, the
I'll
second
jump on
answer
and
then
say
is.
Oh,
Sorry, Joel, go ahead.
I was gonna say why the same sentiment of like this feeling of like, oh, should I be endorsing the Pope in any way, or am I of a separate camp, right? And there's this like almost this feel of like, oh, we have this like different ideology. I shouldn't endorse it. And then to that point, it's like, well, if he is saying things that are true, or maybe even like majority things that I align with, it is something that I can get behind and push forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think. I mean, another way, what you're just saying is exactly right. Another way of putting it is, he lives. The Catholic social teaching is part of an expression of natural law, and all Protestants, historically at least, have affirmed natural law as a valid way of thinking about moral teaching. So he's actually, insofar as he's speaking on Catholic social issues, he's more or less overlapping with Protestant social teaching as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when it comes to let's say some sort of something that's more unique to Roman Catholicism, like particular views of Mary or whatever, yeah, there's going to be some distinct differences. But insofar as it comes to Catholic social teaching, there's not going to be a huge distinction between us and them. We're using the same starting principles. So it's just like there's a lot of wisdom in the world. I'm sure if you wanted to be able to run a business and you went to CEO of Google or something like that, like you would learn from him. And if you wanted to become a doctor, you'd learn from someone who's an expert in medicine. In this case, if moral theology or social teaching is a body of knowledge, a science in the old sense of Scientia, then it follows that you should learn from someone who understands that body of knowledge. And we're free to disagree. Like there's some language I think we all kind of disagree. Like Joel earlier disagreed with some of the language of the differences of intelligence. I have some minor quibbles here and there, I'm sure, but yeah, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to learn from experts in different fields, whether it's the Pope or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one area that I think is interesting to wrestle with that he brings up throughout is just the idea of like involving more people in local decisions at the local level rather than making everything in the hands of a small, powerful few. And I just wonder what this is going to look like practically. There's the nature of artificial intelligence development right now is such that it's private owned, it's enterprise based, it's not in the hands of the government, and there's a lot of changes in what it's making and what the outcomes are as it unfolds over time. And so I get the principle of it being more like he gestures toward it being more democratic. We need to have more people in the political process. He even says at one point the political process needs to have the ability to slow down the pace of it. You know, the political process needs to be such that there can be restrictions should there be it. He doesn't call for, there was that letter signed a year or two ago of like, stop the AI development, and a bunch of people signed it. So he's not signing. Supported by Marxists? What?
Yeah. There's a whole conspiracy for any conspiracy listeners here.
Oh, we got conspiracy listeners. So practically, what is I just don't know what this looks like. Like, I get the principle. I'm supportive of the principle. What does, like, it's just, to me, you just end up gesturing toward regulation. And then it's like, well, what does that regulation look like? I've heard one story of basically these AI companies in Europe. They used to kind of all be responsible for AI safety, but then once they had the government regulation body, then it became a department within the AI company that then cared about regulation. And then everybody else just felt like ethics wasn't their job. And the
Yeah.
encyclical pushes back on that, and it says each engineer is responsible, needs to take heed to their work and all this kind of stuff. So the encyclical pushes back on that. It's everyone's responsibility. But what does it look like to regulate it? And is that not going to end up being the powerful few who make the decision? I don't know how you can help me untangle my thoughts on this, Wyatt.
I don't know either. The one of the interesting things in this principle, though, is that the greater group doesn't necessarily dictate the things that belong to the smaller groups. And so he makes interesting points, like when it comes to education, for example, that there's actually sort of a right and obligation of parents to educate their kids in the way that in accords with their convictions. That's actually not like controversial, but relatively controversial in some conversations where, like, who dictates what is worthy of education for kids? Is it a local body, a school board? Is it a state, whatever it is? And I think that's actually the way, like, because remember early on the document, he's saying the way this looks in every area will look different. So it's up to you pastorally to figure the details of your own country out. At the same time, that sort of principle is really important because if you want to think of it this way, Joel, are you a parent? I don't know.
Yeah, he's got
Yeah, you're okay. So
three kids now.
So we're all parents now. So I would suggest that the way that we start thinking about the humane use of AI is in our parenting decisions. Like, I think it actually has to start kind of at that layer.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm not really sure Anthropic's use of a staff philosopher is going to solve the problem if its working constituency isn't already in line with seeking the common good, for example.
Right. There's an exact parallel with what's going on in the social media industry right now, where there just comes a point where Meta and Google and all the big social media companies, like, they can implement every ethical regulatory safeguard that can be conceived of into their products. But if parents in particular have no desire to practice any wisdom when it comes to their kids using social media, it just doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, and then the next stage of workers is what I was kind of getting at more. It's like in 20 years, if you want common good workers in the workplace, you really got to start at the level, in the subsidiary level that you can influence. So it's your church, it's your family. Like, everyone wants these big problems that'll be solved through some legislation, but, like, if the last 30 years has emphasized, as the encyclical talks about, the expanse of capital without thinking about, like, say, the common good, then that means those in mid-career right now probably are, at least in North America, often motivated primarily for wealth accumulation over other concerns.
Mm-hmm.
And while you need to make money, I'm not against that, by the way, that the only really way to change that is to just educate. And education, by the way, in this letter doesn't mean how we think of education. It's not about facts. It's the old idea of education in Catholic teaching, especially, would be like moral formation, a paideia, bildung, something like that. You're actually forming and shaping someone to be a full human. This whole letter is about. So I think it probably has to start there. And I don't mean this in a hopeless way, but, like, it's very unlikely that a 50-year-old high-level exec in a tech company who hasn't been trained in this is going to be persuaded because you have an AI philosopher on staff.
Yes.
Just unlikely. Like, because we don't change. Everyone thinks we're changed by, like, the perfect argument. We're really changed by the upbringing that we have, the context in which we live, the relationships we have, which includes arguments, by the way. It's just not the only thing that changes us.
Yeah, to paraphrase, I mean, he's gone in a disappointing direction, but he's not wrong when James K. Smith talks about you are what you love. That what you love is the compass that you will follow in the decision making of your life.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like
everyone's an expert at producing arguments that suspiciously fit what they want to do already.
Right.
Um, so, I mean, obviously, all things being equal, when you have friends that love you, they can actually give you an argument that you'll listen to because of the love for each other, despite the fact that it's against your wants. That's where that, the wounds of a friend kind of come in. So, yeah, I'm just not sure that there's going to be changes. I think people are waking up to this. I mean, I don't know if this is just the internet or if it's true among the broad population, but the amount of parents or millennials and older Gen Zs who are aware of the deleterious effects of like only using screens all day or avoiding community or whatever it is, however you want to name that, is becoming it's an obvious thing to talk about, and people
Mhm.
are
Mhm.
making changes. Like it may not be useful to do all 8 hours of schooling on an iPad, not because an iPad is bad, but because it's not made
Yes.
for education. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Or for that kind of education. It's made for particular ends as an instrument, but not the 8 hours a day or whatever.
Right.
Um, so we'll see what happens. But I don't know if I have the answer to disentangle all that in the actual decisions. There are some big groups like the Future Life Institute or something like that, I think out of the UK, that's doing a lot
Yep.
of work on this.
Yep.
On AI futures. There's a number of US groups. In Canada, we have some, but not as many. So I do think there are some policy decisions that can help. Right, isn't Canada going through one right now that's very controversial? It's like some surveillance in
Bill
same thing.
C-22, and
Is that what it is?
Google has flatly stated that they won't be able to speak against it after it's passed because it permits the government to restrict Google employees themselves from speaking out. So that's Google's argument that it's so bad for public speech. It seems to be a law that's similar to what the UK has done in terms of what you say online can be enforced as a hate crime and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's
Super
we
exciting.
live in Canada, fun times. But I do appreciate, like, I feel like I go back and forth on this because sometimes Christians can avoid the political dimension and just focus on, well, just be a good neighbor, be a good parent, change the
Mhm.
world one conversation at a time, one act of love at the time. Every act of kindness matters. And then it's like, well, what about politics? Shouldn't we get into this? And
Yeah.
so both are important. We need to encourage involvement in both, but there is something to be said for cultivating the virtue that you want to see in the world in your own home first and in yourself. And that's a challenge that I think we all need to take. I did like in the encyclical number 100, section 100, I don't know how to state it. It made note of, we can better understand why AI can be a valuable tool. We can make note, though, of areas where it deserves careful consideration. They list three things: the speed and simplicity with the information that it comes out. You get the speed and simplicity, and so it encourages, quote, excessive reliance and the search for ready-made answers, and weaken personal creativity and judgment, end quote. So basically it's like it comes at you so quick that then you lose the sense of creativity and human judgment that you were made for. Secondly, the apparent objectivity of the responses and suggestions these systems provide can lead us to overlook the fact that they reflect the cultural assumptions of those who designed and trained them, with all their strengths and limitations, end quote. So again, there's a human behind the machine. Every time the AI says something, there is a human behind that output. And then third, the artificial imitation of positive human communication. Words of
Yeah.
advice, empathy, friendship, and even love can be engaging and at times genuinely helpful. End quote. And then later on in that paragraph, here the danger is not so much that a person may believe they are communicating with another person, but rather that they may gradually lose the very desire to form genuine human connections, end quote. And I think this is a very valuable thing to think of, and to reflect on, is the very nature of these chatbot tools are impersonating. It's anthropomorphic. It acclimatizes yourself to forget the human element and to perhaps not desire to speak to humans. 1 in 10 teens prefer speaking to an AI over humans. 2 in 10
Yep.
teens would simply say, it's no different. Only 7 in 10 teens would say that they prefer talking to a human over AI. And so this is a real thing to think through, this development. Sherry Turkle talked about it in the 1990s in regards to robots, this leaning toward, oh, the human is good, but the robot is good in the absence of a human, but then all of a sudden it becomes just the same as a human. And then the robot becomes better than the human because it's
Yeah.
objective, it's more efficient, all of these things. And so I think of some of those things, in order to go back to Wyatt, your point, virtue, form virtue in your day-to-day life, patience, creativity, what are the other virtues that we should be cultivating in the age of AI? There's a conference for you, hosted by Wyatt Graham at Carey University.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you kind of nailed it already in terms of, well, you quoted the thing with the encyclical, but like this happens so fast, so quickly that we almost don't have the patience to be creative sometimes. Like it is really I mean, I use whatever LLMs pretty regularly, but it there's an interesting piece. So like, let's say you're trying to learn, so in theological studies, Greek, to learn to read the New
Mhm.
Testament. It's very easy to use an app to learn Greek. Great. It's very easy to use AI to decline or conjugate or to translate things for you. Great. But my question is the result that you got the translation or the declension correct the goal? Or does the process by which you have learned the language and all that it means and implies the goal? And
Right.
obviously it's a bit of both, but I think that if you skip to the conclusion or the results through the speed at which AI can assist you regularly, you'll have lost the particular intellectual and moral virtues gained through the not only the struggle, but also the realization of what language is, what it does, what it communicates, the meaning of words in their nuanced connections, and so on. Kind of goes back to something I saw on Substack recently, where someone made the comment that I'm not sure any of the great writers of the past would have been proud to share
I
a
saw
piece of
that.
writing
Yeah.
every week. And you go, yeah, because we're supposed to write every week or twice a week, whatever it is, because that's just the pace of things today. But the pace of things today doesn't necessarily improve the quality of the things that we're releasing.
Yeah.
So I'm not I'm not sure what the virtue is that I'm trying to say, but it's almost like the virtue of just like this. It's a sort of a long patience that doesn't feel the need to always keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that Samuel James talked about pretty recently in one of his Substacks, which is one of the best things I think he's ever written. It's lived
Mm.
written free in my head since he talked about it, the difference between writing and content creation, and how writing is the byproduct of slow and patient thinking that doesn't have a timetable for when you put the thing out, whereas content creation is all about that rhythm. You've got your workflow, you've got your you've got your inputs and your outputs. It's very mechanical to get uh, a certain steady drip of new things on a consistent basis. And that was really, I think, really liberating for me as somebody who's tried to maintain a Substack presence over the years and just failed miserably at. But for contrasting, yeah, AI will really help you with content creation. AI will really help you hit that, twice weekly Substack post or Instagram reel or whatever. But it's not going to help you do that slow, patient work of thinking where you're freed from that pressure to do something all the time at a consistent clip. You share what you thought when you finish thinking it.
Yeah, I think I see that same parallel in, the builder world where it's like, well, maybe the phrase is that we are all managers now. And
Yes.
that phrase
Yes.
is like, okay, we have a bunch of agents and the agents are doing what we call like the IC work, individual contributor work. And there is a phenomenon that has occurred in, you know, corporations where as you move up the management chain, you do lose touch with the craft of the individual contributor, like gathering the details, doing the work. And after
Mhm.
many years, when the work at the bottom changes, let's say some technology that people are using that you as a manager aren't using, you then like go out of touch with that, right? You're like, well, I only know these management things now. So I think in what we're actually seeing also happening is that managers now also have to do individual work in the sense of like creating their own thing. So there is this sort of sense of like the change in technology has shaped how we will maybe spend more of our time, and we should be aware of that. We are all managers, so we should make an extra effort to pursue that individual work to make sure we don't dull our blade, so to speak.
Yeah, that's good.
I
Hmm.
read something, Joel. It was like a large scale, like it might have been like like a meta study of other studies about employees and how it changed their experience of work. And I don't know if it was surprising, but one of the results was that AI use in the workplace seems to actually have increased the intensity of work because of
Yes.
the expectations of rapidity. So it definitely made some work easier, like spreadsheets or whatever. But then the expectation was to do things faster and quicker. So as a consequence, it didn't actually make the experience of work feel easier or less hectic, but it accelerated that. What do you think about that
Yeah,
finding?
I think that's true. And there's probably another phenomena that's come out, which is the term called AI vampires. I don't know if you guys have heard about that,
Yeah.
What
but
does it
it's
mean?
like because people building tech are so unlocked by it, they find themselves staying up into the late hours of the morning working on AI. And it's like, what happens? Like, oh, I turned into an AI vampire. I'm just like always coming back to doing this thing because it is in some sense really like fulfilling and accelerating. And maybe it's because it's
Yes.
novel. That could also be a thing of like, oh wow, like the novelty of like how much we can do is kind of like unlocking people to be like, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this, and my appetite has grown. I'm going to build like these many products. So all of those things compounding onto each other has increased the intensity, right? It's like, hey, the pace is moving faster. So if you don't step into this thing, you'll be like a company that's going to be like by the wayside, right? It'll be like some old decrepit company that's going to like crash and burn one day. So there is like a general sense of intensity, expectations, but also there's like a natural feeling of like, well, I could do more too. So yeah, it's compounding.
Some of that is Jevons paradox, right? The
Yeah.
phenomena that as technology advances and makes a resource of completing a task easier and cheaper, it often increases the demand and consumption rather than
Yeah.
drops it, because all of
Yep.
a sudden it's easier now. It's like you didn't get as much mail as when all of a sudden email existed. And then, oh, now that it's so easy, we're going to communicate with each other more through
Hmm.
mail.
You know what that reminds me of, and maybe it's the same thing in different words. I've often thought about this phrase, just do what you can. And when people say like when you're overwhelmed or something like that. But
Hmm.
I've often thought when you're overwhelmed, someone saying just doing what you can, everything feels possible.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
like I think if you lived in 1783 where you're like do what you can was limited to two options or something,
Right.
um that would make sense. But I think of like do what I can. Well, I could read all the documentation, fill out all the forms, I could do 97 emails and calls, I could create an AI like that kind of language feels more overwhelming. Like I actually would argue that you should not do what you can.
Mm,
Hmm.
that's
You should
good.
always do what is good. And that means that like on the weekend, like well, I can do more or I can do this house thing or I can whatever. It's like, no, you can, but you shouldn't,
Yeah.
depending on circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good word. And maybe we'll leave it there and we'll let each of us think about what we can do versus what we should do. I mean, there's the old statement of Jurassic Park, which we've quoted before, not reflecting on whether or not we should create this, but whether we can create it. But it is a really important moment. All of us are feeling hectic. I know for the two big AI projects that I've worked on, both of them gave me this sensation of massive restlessness while doing it, because it's so fast, and the slowest part was me reading what the AI generated. So it's like, oh, what about this? And I could optimize it with this, and let me get another thing going at the same time. And that there's a restlessness to it, an intensity to it. And yeah, there's times in our life serving God where there's an intensity to it. Jesus in the Gospel of Mark has many moments of intensity. He tries to get his disciples away to take a break, and then they get surrounded, and then he's like, we got to take a break. So they go on a boat. He goes away by himself. He tries to catch up to the boat by walking on water. Like it's a wild back and forth story in the Gospel of Mark, but he emphasizes to his disciples, you got to take a break. There's a virtue in slowing down in seasons, and being able to recognize that. So anyways, Wyatt, I always appreciate talking to you. You are a theologically astute individual who also reminds me of what it means to be human in a really livable way. So thank you for that. And I hope the Lord blesses you as you continue your work in Canada as a theological leader. And thank you to all of our listeners. You can support What Would Jesus Tech by going to our website, whatwouldjesusTech.com. You can download our AI-generated ebook. Yep, we made an ebook with AI summarizing our top 40 episodes. So you can flip through that if you're trying to catch up and you're new to the podcast. It is free, and it's in an ebook format, so you can have it on your Kindle. And thank you for listening. Use tech, find rest, glorify God. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.